When one recounts the life of Nasr al-Din Shah Qajar, the 19th century ruler of Persia, a man contradictory in nature, inclined toward kindness, yet not free from eccentricities, it is impossible to overlook the figure of a boy named Aziz al-Sultan. He was born in the year 1879 and entered history under the nickname Malijak, the Sparrow. For the Shah, this child became a being of singular significance. His presence filled the court with a vague disquiet. No one fully understood what, precisely, bound the aging monarch to the boy. After the Shah's assassination in the year 1896, one of the accused listed among his motives this disgraceful attachment. What exactly he meant remains unclear. In Iran of that era, as in a number of other societies of the region, specific cultural codes existed in which the presence of a child in the intimate orbit of a man was, regrettably, not as rare as we would prefer to imagine today. Even so, in the case of Aziz al-Sultan, the nature of the relationship remains a matter of scholarly dispute. Some researchers see in it not an immoral passion, but a tragic sentimentality. The attempt of an aging, isolated ruler to find unconditional affection in a world where everything else could be bought or bartered. Before Aziz al-Sultan, the Shah had cherished another attachment, a tricolored cat named Babri Khan. The animal belonged to one of the women of the harem. The Shah fed the cat himself, played with it for long stretches, and carried it in his arms during walks. His fondness irritated the other women of the palace. In a world where even the slightest sign of the ruler's attention could turn into power and privilege, the love he showed a cat became a threatening thing. One day, the animal was poisoned. The death of Babri Khan struck Nasr al-Din to the core. He remained shut in his chambers for a long time and seemed to lose the very capacity for tenderness. Sometime later, his gaze fell upon a boy, the grandson of a Kurdish shepherd. The child's father served at the palace, and his aunt was among the Shah's wives. The boy had scarcely turned 1 year old and made a rather unpleasant impression, dirty, loud, stubborn. But in this very child, the aging ruler may have glimpsed what he himself had lacked all his life: helplessness, simplicity, and that wordless trust which cannot be purchased. The boy was painfully unattractive. A thin, awkward body, an oversized head, sparse hair, dull and inflamed eyes. He stuttered, coughed constantly, his nose ran without cease, and his skin had a grayish cast, as though the sun had never warmed him. He smelled of medicine, sweat, and something stale, the dampness of an old room. This is unsurprising. The boy often lay with fever and for weeks did not leave his quarters. Children like him are usually made invisible. In the palace world, where beauty, scent, and smoothness of skin ruled everything, ugliness inspired a superstitious dread. Servants avoided him, children would not play with him, women winced at his presence. And yet, this awkward, sickly child somehow came to the Shah's attention, at a moment when Nasr al-Din was especially desolate after the death of his beloved tricolored cat. The animal's death seemed to have extinguished his final spark of joy, and perhaps in this unkempt child, with his clumsiness and shy, bewildered gaze, the Shah suddenly sensed something familiar, the same helplessness, the same sorrow. At first, the Shah merely permitted the boy to be brought in to amuse him. The child spoke in a funny, muddled way, mangled words, and the ruler laughed, loudly, genuinely, like someone who had long forgotten the feel of laughter. In time, the boy began appearing more and more often. Malijak was a living creature incapable of pretense. His frankness, crude, at times irritating, seemed to the Shah like a breath of real life in a world saturated with falsehoods. When the ruler ordered the boy installed in the harem, where the Shah's own children were raised. Whispers spread through the palace. Servants murmured behind doors. Women in the harem exchanged glances. The child was taken from his parents and placed under the care of his aunt, one of the Shah's wives. The harem stirred like a nest of snakes. Everyone understood that this woman might now gain influence, however indirectly. But eliminating the child was far harder than disposing of a cat. He cried, clung, screamed, and any move against him now carried personal risk. The Shah's sons observed all this with open hatred. They had grown up in the chill of their father's indifference, and now they watched him suddenly come alive beside this scrawny little creature. Nasr al-Din never addressed any of them tenderly, never held their hands, yet he could embrace this boy in front of everyone. The court lived in a state of expectation, of an ending, or a scandal, or both. Malijak became a symbol of something rotten, absurd, and yet inevitable, like the Shah's own old age. His presence beside the ruler was a reminder of decay, not only of the body, but of power itself. After the Shah drew the boy close, the life of his entire family changed almost instantly. The poor Kurdish relatives, who had until recently kept to the margins of palace life, now grew wealthy before everyone's eyes. They were granted land, houses, jewels. Money streamed toward them unabashedly. All of it happened openly. The Shah saw no need to conceal that he did this for the sake of his favorite. The boy himself grew up in unimaginable luxury. He had personal servants, guards, his own tutor, and even a eunuch appointed solely to him. For his amusement, a children's musical troupe was created, its musicians catering to his every whim. He lived like a miniature sovereign, accustomed to the notion that any desire of his was law. At official ceremonies, he behaved exactly as he pleased. His conduct knew no bounds. He interrupted viziers, laughed loudly, inserted himself into the conversations of adults, and the Shah only beamed at him. No one dared so much as rebuke him. Nasr al-Din stroked the boy's head, kissed him, called him by tender names. He kept Malijak's first lost tooth in a gilded casket adorned with precious stones, as though it were a sacred relic. As the child grew older, titles rained upon him, one after another. The Shah appointed him a commander, complete with full ceremonies, a uniform, and ranks, as though he were some seasoned military leader. He then granted him a rank equivalent to that of the prime minister. More titles followed, along with lands and estates that rightfully belonged to the Shah's sons. Now all of this passed to the boy. With the titles came wealth. The finest lands in the country, gardens, houses, chests of gold and jewels, all flowed toward Malijak and his relatives. The family that had until recently lived at the mercy of fate became one of the most influential at court. When the boy turned 11, the Shah married him to his own daughter. To many, this seemed madness, but by then nothing in the palace could truly astonish anyone. The young Malijak quickly realized that everything was permitted to him. Where once caution and fear reigned, he allowed himself things no one else would have dared. His insolence grew into licentiousness, yet the Shah did not react. To him, it was merely play, the mischief of a spoiled child. With time, the youth discovered other pleasures, lavish feasts, wine, coarse jokes. He could swear in front of anyone, even at the Shah himself. Once, in a fit of irritation, he called him the son of a pimp, and Nasr al-Din not only failed to take offense, but burst into loud laughter, as though it were nothing more than an amusing prank. By that time, Malijak already had his own palace, attended by a multitude of servants. He demanded to be addressed as the Shah's son, and the Shah willingly issued a decree confirming this. Moreover, the young man was permitted to punish anyone who showed insufficient respect. According to contemporary accounts, within a short time, he caused the deaths of 5 people simply on a whim. Malijak faced no consequences whatsoever. Rumors that the Shah intended to make his favorite the heir to the throne spread quickly. The clergy attempted to calm the public, insisting that Nasir al-Din's strange love for the youth was not a sin, but a peculiar human attachment carried to its extreme. Few believed this. Whenever the Shah traveled to Europe, he invariably took Malijak with him. His own sons were never included. He presented his protégé to Queen Victoria, introduced him to bankers and aristocrats. Once, at the Rothschilds' residence, the boy stole a trinket, and diplomats had to explain that this was not a crime, but the innocent whim of an Eastern prince. Meanwhile, affairs of state receded ever further into the background. The Shah spent hours not in the council of ministers, but in the chambers of his favorite. His attention to the governance of the country weakened. Decisions grew rarer. Power became an appendage to his strange dependence, an attachment that now damaged not only his reputation, but Persia itself. In the end, everything ended as it inevitably had to. Eventually, Nasir al-Din was killed. His death was the culmination of years of accumulated irritation, humiliation, and fatigue felt by the country under his rule. It was not merely a political crime, rather an explosion of collective disgust at what power had become. Many expected that Malijak would immediately meet the same fate. It seemed obvious that the Shah's sons, humiliated throughout their father's life, would never forgive his favorite. But events took another turn. The boy who had once been the symbol of a monarch's caprice unexpectedly survived. He not only remained alive, but managed to keep a substantial portion of the wealth the Shah had once bestowed upon him. He divorced the daughter of his benefactor, married again, and lived a long life, quietly, without brilliance, but without want. People no longer feared him, but neither did they touch him. There was nothing in him worth hating. Beneath the glittering shell there had never been strength, nor character, nor intellect. He simply vanished from history, dissolved like a shadow left behind by a fading light. And yet there is something painfully human in this story. A lonely, aging Shah, surrounded by falsehood and fear, tried to replace real feeling, first with a cat, then with a child. He may not have understood what he was searching for. He desperately needed affection, but did not know how to earn it. Some say that in his youth he lost his first and most beloved son, the child of the woman he truly loved. Others claim the reason lay in his own childhood, filled with fear and estrangement, and the Shah himself perhaps could not have explained exactly why he needed this particular boy or what he found in him. Thus ended one of the strangest, most unsettling, and in its own way most tragic chapters in the courtly history of late 19th century Persia.